team, because it really is a team effort, and I'm very grateful to Catalina. Hand it over to you now.
Okay, thank you. So before we begin the presentation, I just wanted to let you know the guest here today will present for about 45 minutes, and then we've scheduled 15 minutes of question and answer at the end. So as the presentation's going, please type your questions into the group chat. They'll be answered at the end of the presentation. So welcome to today's portion, guest speaker portion of Zoom. My name is Catalina Juarez, and our guest is Dr. James Pita. Dr. Pita is an artificial intelligence scientist who has pioneered AI solutions to pressing challenges in security, finance, pharmaceuticals, other fields, using a combination of machine learning, optimization, decision theory, and game theory. His client list includes several federal government agencies, as well as Fortune 500 companies. Some of his major accomplishments include co-founding Avada Intelligence, which was recently acquired by Procore Technologies, co-founding Misfit Venture Partners, a venture capital firm where he is an active manager, receiving a commendation from the city of Los Angeles for pioneering AI methods to improve security at LAX, receiving the RIST Prize by the Military Operations Research Society, being a finalist for the Euro Excellence in Practice Award, being invited to being invited as a TEDx speaker, and being invited to advise a NATO committee on cybersecurity and at a working group, and receiving multiple Best Paper awards for his academic research in AI at major international conferences. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm very excited to talk to this cohort of students. I participated in similar programs when I was in high school, and I thought they were very valuable experiences, and they actually helped a lot of my decision-making process later in life.
So to give you a little bit of background, the USC Viterbi K-12 STEM Center's goal is to increase lifelong participation in STEM by providing community-oriented and research-based educational opportunities. And the SHINE students are in week 5 of their research projects, and they're starting to work on their research poster presentations, which you were able to hear a little bit about today. So we're excited to have you here to share the journey your scientific research has taken you, and I'll turn over the presentation to you.
Thank you. So I thought a lot about what I wanted to discuss today. There's a lot that I could talk about, and I just wanted to think about what might be most useful to you as high school students making the transition to college and beyond. And what crossed my mind is opportunity. And it has really guided where I ended up in life. I used to joke with friends that I had a superpower, and I thought that superpower was good fortune. I thought that I was always in the right place at the right time. And one of my friends, who was very wise, once asked me the question, did you ever stop to think that maybe your superpower isn't good fortune? It's actually recognizing opportunity where others may not. So this talk is really about how to abandon good plans for better ones. And so just to start off, my first plan, kind of version 1.0, was to go to college and to become a computer scientist. I know these guys invited you to watch my TED Talk, but for those of you who may not have had a chance to catch it, I knew at a very early age that I wanted to be involved with computers. My parents gave me my first computer when I was around 8 or 9 years old, and it was just a transformational experience for me. I was so enamored with it. I loved everything about it. I loved what you could do on it. I loved how it opened up new possibilities, and I was just so excited about it. So I grew up in a very rural community, Rock Springs, Wyoming, very different than Los Angeles, California. We were a town of about 20,000 people in a state of about 500,000 people. There are probably more people in this county than there were in my entire state back then. In fact, I know that for certain. My parents were only high school educated, but they really, really valued education. And they really pushed me and my brother to, really embrace education and really take it seriously. My dad migrated from Spain at 23. My mom was a migrant farm worker with 13 brothers and sisters. Oh my, big family on my mom's side. And they all lived very close, and they were all very close. So I had a lot of influences in my life growing up, but probably the biggest influence on my career trajectory was my one older brother, who was 5 years older than me, and he was my first mentor. He went to college, obviously, well before me. He was the first one in our family to ever go to college, and he went to the University of Wyoming. So when I was a senior in high school, he had just wrapped up his college career, and he sat down with me and he gave me the one piece of advice that he said I needed to take seriously. He had told me a lot of things along the way, but he said if I learned nothing else and I took no other advice from him, I should pay attention to this. And he asked me if I would promise him that I would go anywhere but the University of Wyoming. And I was really curious about this because I thought, you seem to enjoy your time there. You seem to get a reasonable education there. Like, why not? And he said, I'm not saying that you would not learn a lot at the University of Wyoming, but what I am telling you is that what you might learn scholastically, you'll miss out on learning about different people, different communities, and different thought processes, because people largely at the University of Wyoming are from Wyoming, and Wyoming people tend to think and feel a certain way about, issues, global issues, local issues, how they've all learned. They've all had similar learning styles in their communities. And he said, what you will gain by venturing out of this community is an understanding about how other people think about the world around them. And you'll learn about the experiences they've had that are different from your own. So he said, I don't care if you go to just a neighboring state or, if you go really far away, but just get out and explore and really understand how other people view the world. He said he had the good fortune of meeting some people who came to the University of Wyoming from other places, and it just opened his eyes to the possibilities. So he said, rather than having to look for people who come from other places, he said he thought it would be better for me to be in a place where I'm the outsider and everyone I meet is from this community that I'm stepping into. So I thought to myself, okay, that sounds reasonable. Let's go to version 2, plan 1.1, college version 2. So I looked at a lot of colleges. I fell in love with Michigan State University. It was an incredible time. It was one of the best decisions I ever made. And when I first got there, I thought, again, still going into computer science, but I learned that computer scientists actually make pretty good money. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to graduate and I'm going to go work for Microsoft or Google or Amazon or one of these big tech companies, and I'm just going to make a lot of money. That was version 2.0 of college. So when I was in college, I tutored for extra money. And the reason I bring this up is because it really gave me a little bit of kind of a glance into what it's like to teach. And teaching is very difficult. I can tell you from firsthand experience, even from tutoring. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of creative thinking. You learn that, some people see things one way and other people see it a different way. And as a teacher, it's your responsibility to think of like, what are the 10 different ways I can explain this one topic so that these 10 different people all understand it the same. And so, teaching, it's an experience I hope you all have, so you'll appreciate the teachers and mentors in your life. And that was an experience that I really value, and it helped me understand, just how difficult that is. I also interned during the summers. This was important because it actually gave me some experience in what it's like to work in the workforce, right? So if I graduated and I went to get a job like Plan 1.1 was, it helped me see what that world might look like. And then I also started researching with professors, which I think is phenomenal that you guys are already doing, because that in and of itself is its own area as well. And it helped me see, what that world looked like, understand that. Obviously, as the second member of my family to ever go to college, I had never really considered a career in research. I had never really thought of education beyond college, going for a master's degree or a PhD. These were things that had never really gone into my calculus about what I wanted to do with my life. And these were my second mentors. I ran into a couple of professors at Michigan State University who took a deep, deep interest in me. in my research capabilities. And so they invited me to consider another career trajectory. They said, have you ever considered going on to get your PhD? We really enjoy working with you. You're very good at research. And we just think this is an alternative that you would do very well. And I told them I had never really thought about it. So, I sat down and they told me more about what went into it and what that career might look like. And I thought, you know what, this could be a lot of fun. I would like to be a professor. I really enjoyed my time in college. It was one of my favorite parts of my life so far. And I said, yeah, this sounds good, actually. Let's look at what this looks like. So that gets me to Plan 2.0. But before I move to Plan 2.0, I did want to point out that one of my favorite experiences at Michigan State University was when I got to meet the real Kermit the Frog, which you see here. And so it was a really interesting experience in that the gentleman who actually voices Kermit the Frog is very, very dedicated to his craft. So when I first stepped into the room, he was sitting on the floor and he had the Muppet obviously up. And I went to shake his hand. I was such a pleasure to meet him. And I went to introduce myself and he immediately stuffed the Muppet in my face and said, "It's a pleasure to meet you too. I'm Kermit the Frog." And I was like, wow, did not even look at me, the gentleman on the floor. He would not even acknowledge my existence. Everything he did through the Muppet. And so he was fully invested. And it was just a really interesting experience that, I think back on often. It's an experience like none other I'll have. So on to Plan 2.0. I went from thinking I was going to graduate and be wealthy to a broke research assistant. So PhDs are phenomenal in that they, a lot of them you can get fully funded. I did. And so they paid for my entire PhD. They gave me a stipend to live off of. It was not lavish. So that's why I say a broke research assistant. I was not, going out and going crazy on the weekends and going on trips on my own. However, I did get to travel the world during my time there. And so the perks of a PhD can be very exciting. You get to go to a lot of conferences, and I got to meet a ton of global thought leaders in my field who were pushing boundaries and looking into technologies, much like you guys have got to experience, that could potentially change the world someday. So as much as I wasn't making the same kind of money I might have been making if I had gone straight into the workforce, I was getting a lot of experience and being exposed to a lot of things that I would never have been able to if I had gone straight to the workforce. And that's not to say that, going straight to the workforce is a bad idea or, isn't a direction that people should want to take. It's just that they would be different experiences. And so for me, the opportunity was what I wanted. And that's why I talked about exploring internships and exploring tutoring and exploring research, because having seen into all of those worlds, this was the world that excited me the most. So I got to go all over the world. I got to meet with professors from all over the world, doing research similar to mine, doing research very different than mine, thinking about the world in very different ways. And this again gets to that idea of just seeing how other people see the world, the kinds of problems they were facing in their countries versus the kinds of problems we're facing in our countries, the technology they really want to see come to light versus the technology we really want to see come to light. And so it was an exciting time in my life. And I myself got to pioneer AI research. So I studied under Dr. Milind Tambe, who has a direct lineage to one of the founders of the field of artificial intelligence, actually. So he was there in the committee when they got together and actually thought about this idea of artificial intelligence and coined the term. And so that was his great grand advisor. And then he threw a chain of advisors. Milind Tambe was my advisor. And in collaboration with him, we founded what are known as security games. Now this is research that's studied worldwide. You can look it up, but Dr. Milind Tambe is largely credited with kind of founding the concept of security games and computational game theory. And we got to work with a lot of organizations, the US Coast Guard, Federal Air Marshal Service, World Wildlife Fund, Transportation Security Administration. It was an exciting time. And not every research lab does that kind of applied research. So some research labs are really focused solely on theoretical research, which is really just, kind of foundational research that might someday be used in applied research. But applied research is really taking concepts and applying them to real world problems, which is what we were doing, which was very exciting for me. I learned that as much as I love research, I don't like research that is more theory oriented as much as I really love research that is more application oriented. And so when I was an undergrad, I was doing a lot of applied research. When I got to grad school, I learned a lot about the difference between theoretical research and applied research, just by interacting with other professors, going to a lot of different talks, and seeing what they were working on. So these were kind of my third mentors, in the sense that I realized, I didn't want to be doing theoretical research, and I didn't think I wanted to be a professor anymore, mainly because it requires a lot of publishing, and writing is not my favorite subject. I am no English major. So, all the writing you have to do, doing the work is fantastic, but conveying that work to others, putting it out into the world is also a lot of work. You have to be able to articulate the work you've done. You have to be able to communicate very strongly and very clearly, because the people you're communicating to are, again, from all around the world. And so your language has to be very crisp. It has to be very strong, very understandable. And so, I learned a lot in that process, but I learned that I would much rather be working on applied research. So, getting things out into the world rather than writing about research, getting concepts out into the world. And so my third mentors, a lot of professors told me, you can still do research without being a professor. You can go to some of these applied laboratories like Sandia National Laboratory, Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. And I ended up actually going to RAND Corporation, which is a research institution locally here in Santa Monica. And so that was plan 2.1. I went to grad school expecting to become a professor, but I realized that there was an opportunity to continue to do research in a more applied environment. So there is a book, if you're interested in learning more about RAND Corporation. I will say that if you've worked at RAND, this book credits us for doing a lot more than we think we've done in our time there. But the book is called Soldiers of Reason, The RAND Corporation and the Rise of the American Empire. And it largely credits RAND Corporation for a lot of key decisions that were made along America's history. And why, we have certain policies, why we made certain choices, like in the Cuban Missile Crisis and other key events like this. While I was there, I worked on climate change, military operations, space operations. I had a top secret clearance. As the old saying goes, I would tell you about it, but then I might have to take you out. It was a lot of fun though, and I learned a lot there as well. Very exciting time in my life, just seeing kind of the bigger picture and the bigger problems and kind of what people were doing. But while I was there doing that research, and my tenure there was actually pretty short-lived, it was just under 2 years, I met my fourth mentor. So as I was graduating from USC, we encountered a gentleman, Zari Bagdasarian. He was a serial entrepreneur. He had started multiple businesses before Avada Intelligence, and he caught wind of our research, caught wind of our applied systems, the work we were doing for agencies like the Federal Air Marshal Service and U.S. Coast Guard. And he approached our team and said, you guys have done some phenomenal research here that has a lot of real-world applications. Have you ever considered starting a company? And me and my colleagues, my other co-founders, Manish Jain and Ripple, had never really considered it. We said, no, we were just doing the research because it was fun and exciting and we enjoyed the work. And so he said, well, if you would be interested in starting a company, I would love to mentor you and guide you. And if you'll have me, I would love to be directly involved, but I'm happy to just be an advisor if you guys want to do this on your own. Young entrepreneurs have the gumption and the excitement. And so he said, I'm happy to let you guys take the lead and take charge. And we said, no, we have very little business experience. We're researchers at the core, and most of our experiences has come from, research environments. So we would love to have you, helm the ship. So he joined our team and we co-founded Avada Intelligence, and that led to Plan 3.0. where I thought I would, or unplanned 3.0 as I like to call it, I thought I would lead a life of research and spend my career, at RAND, or maybe transition to a university environment later. That was kind of where I thought my life was going to take me. I was pretty committed to it. It felt good. It felt right. But then this opportunity presented itself, and I said, I can always come back to research. It's not going anywhere. There will always be room for research. And so if I don't like this, or it's not what I think it's going to be, I'll make my way back, and I'm sure I can find interesting work. There's always interesting research to be done. So Unplanned 3.0 was entrepreneurship. We co-founded Avada Intelligence, formerly Armorway, which was acquired by Procore Technologies, as Kat told you at the beginning of this conversation. But what we were doing at Avada Intelligence was really thinking about artificial intelligence in a more holistic fashion. And so you've probably heard a lot about machine learning and deep learning over the years, from the news, from professors, from other people. This is all the rave right now, machine learning and deep learning. And they are very great techniques for achieving a lot of solutions to complicated problems. But we like to think of AI more like a poker game. And so what I mean by that is if you have a weekly poker game, you have a number of individuals who come to that weekly poker game every time. They show up every week. And so with these individuals, you play a lot of hands over time, and you actually know a lot about them. We consider this a scenario where you have lots of data. You've seen how they play hands. You've seen the kinds of bluffs they make. You see how willing they are to open with certain hands. Are they really conservative players? Are they really aggressive players? You know a lot about these people. And that's what machine learning and deep learning is like. If you have a lot of data, a lot of kind of data that is representative of the environment or what is happening, then machine learning is able to take all this representative data, learn the patterns and the trends and kind of the answers, and then when a new observation comes in, it's able to tell you, based on what I've seen and all this historical data, this is the act you should make. This is probably the move you should make in this scenario. However, in the game of poker, you also have scenarios where maybe people show up sporadically, right? So there's the people who show up every week, and then there are people who show up maybe once a month. For these people, you have limited data. So maybe you know a little bit about them, but you just haven't had quite enough time yet to really know how they act or what they're going to do. And so in those scenarios, you really want to augment these techniques like machine learning with techniques like decision theory. And what this really means is that in the game of poker, there are set rules, and you know that certain hands are better than others. You know that certain hands are more likely to win than others. You know that certain behaviors are more expected than others. And so you can augment what you've seen by these kind of ground truths in the world, these things that you just know to be true. And so you can kind of, extrapolate what you've seen with what good behavior should be and kind of get a guess about, where this person falls. And then there's a scenario where somebody brings their friend along for the first time and you have no data on this person. And there we're looking at combining techniques like decision theory and behavioral game theory and behavioral analysis, where I don't know anything about this person, but I at least know kind of how to hedge my bets and kind of minimize risk. I can make intelligent decisions based on kind of what kinds of behaviors I might run into, what kind of plays I might run into, and how can I best protect myself against bad outcomes in those scenarios. And so that's how we were thinking about this. So what our company did is we worked with, as you know, a lot of enterprises and government agencies and other people are really just at the ground floor of getting their AI kind of vision off the ground. And so what we would do is we would sit down with these companies and we would start from the very beginning and help them envision their AI strategy. We would help them understand what kinds of techniques work best against what kinds of problems. Is their data ready? So, what does their data look like? Are they even in a position to start building AI solutions? What kind of infrastructure do they need in place? What kind of tools do they need? All of that stuff to kind of lay the foundation and the framework. Once we got all those right technologies, the right platforms, the right integrations in place, made sure they were collecting the right data, We would help them start their journey by helping them create their initial models, their initial training and testing data sets, do some model tuning. And then once we got those prototypes off the ground, we'd help them scale them into actual applications, which they would deliver to their customers, either internal or external. Internal customers are when you build AI solutions or technologies that make your workforce better. External customers are when you build things that you're going to actually sell to someone. So that was what we provided. And that's what ultimately led to our acquisition. A company wanted to accelerate this whole process for themselves, and they didn't want to share our time with any other organizations. So they bought our entire company so that we would do this strictly for them. And so that's how that acquisition ended up happening. And I'm currently working for that company still, Procore Technologies. I really enjoy my time there. They do construction software system. So they have a cloud-based construction management software system. And their vision is to unite everyone in construction on a global platform to make the lives of everyone in construction better. And construction, if you've ever done anything with it, is a very interesting field in that it has a lot of moving pieces and a lot of moving parts. From the owner to the general contractor to the subcontractors to the people actually out in the field. And there are a lot of communication gaps between these different levels. And they're trying to make it a lot more seamless process so all these people can collaborate and work together and bring these massive construction projects to life. So what did I learn in my Unplanned 3.0? This is kind of something I'll leave you with. A lot of you may have ideas about starting a company someday or starting a business someday. And these are kind of my big lessons learned. I like to call Entrepreneurship 101. The key reasons not to start a company. Don't start a company if you like having nights and weekends to relax. Because you'll find that if you start a company, there will never be a moment where you're not thinking about it. Even if you don't have to, if you really care about the company, you'll find yourself constantly trying to find work time into your day to make something better or to improve something or to do something. And so you'll find you're going to work, if you start your own company, you'll probably work more than you ever would working for someone else. Do not start a company if your goal is to make lots of money. I promise you, if you do the research, there are far better ways to make money. I definitely could have made just as much money being really smart with my money and investing very intelligently and doing other things. There are probably different career trajectories I could have taken to make more money. There are a lot of ways to make money. If you want to make money, that's not the reason to start a company. There are easier ways. And I encourage you to look into them if that's your goal. Don't start a company if you don't like failing, because you're going to fail a lot. And it's funny because you always hear about the major successes, but even with those, they never talk about how many times they failed. I liken this to the Wright brothers. They had one plane that flew, and everybody knows about that plane. But I could not tell you probably the number of crash planes those guys went through. Probably thousands, tens of thousands maybe, who knows. But the thing is, they failed a lot before they succeeded. And do not start a company if you don't like rejection, because you are going to tell your idea to a lot of people. You're going to share your vision. You're going to share your concept. And many of those people are going to say, this is a terrible idea. Why would you do this? This makes no sense. And if you let that stop you, you will never get a company off the ground, because there will be plenty of people who do not believe in your idea. What's important is that you believe in your idea, which brings me to the reasons to start a company. The number one reason to start a company is because you don't like the status quo. All the great companies started because they wanted to change something or improve something. So, this is the easiest way to succeed is you see something in the world and you just think to yourself, this could be done better, or this could be done differently. I don't know why people are doing it this way when they could be doing it this other way. And you just want to see that change come into the world. Second reason to start a company is you want to be the master of your own destiny. The one nice part about running my own company was nobody could tell me when and where to be. I got to make all those decisions for myself. I got to be wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted. And so I was in complete control of everything I did, my schedule, everything. And the final reason is you want to find yourself in places you never imagined. While I was at Avant Intelligence, I actually got to do a number of very exciting things. I got to go to a party at Kensington Palace. I actually got to go, before they put them on loan, I actually got to go see the dueling pistols used in the Hamilton-Burr duel before anyone else, which was really cool and exciting, especially because I saw them just before Hamilton came out. So it's kind of a claim to fame amongst my friends. You know, and I got to meet a lot of very incredible people. I've been able to sit down at dinners with the former General Secretary of NATO. You know, I guess there's just a number of things that come when you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to expand your business and you're meeting people and you're collaborating with people, and it can be a very exciting time. Oh, yeah. Kat just reminded me, I also got to go to the Oscars once for security reasons. So I got to walk the red carpet, not during Oscar night, but I got to kind of, you know, walk around the environment and see everything behind the scenes. And so that was a lot of fun as well. So that brings us to today. What does Plan 4.0 look like? Right now, I don't really know for certain. I have my eyes open for new opportunities, but one thing I'm very interested in at the moment is AI for social good. And I just want to spend this time telling you guys a little bit about some of the cool things happening in this space that I've been tracking and that I think you might find interesting, and specifically around wildlife conservation, social work, and radicalization prevention. So in terms of wildlife conservation, the big question being asked was, how do we patrol for illegal poaching of animals, forests, and fisheries? And so the solution they came up with is to use the power of AI to plan with limited information and learn poaching behavior over time. And some of the domains this is being applied in is fishery protection, forest protection, and wildlife protection. And this is just a quote from BBC World Service. Poachers have killed all the tigers in this Cambodian wildlife sanctuary, but rangers are fighting back with artificial intelligence. And so, you know, these solutions are being deployed globally, you know, and they've shown to improve the kind of capabilities of these security forces or protection forces of really preventing these kinds of poaching. And so I think this is just such an amazing use of artificial intelligence. I think that we should be looking for more opportunities to apply AI for social good and really help fight some of the, you know, negative things that exist within our world. And this is just a plug for another side project I'm working on, but I'm working, so this is with my fund. We are funding a company, Heart Shaped Games, to bring to life a title called We Are the Caretakers. If any of you are gamers, please look out for this title on Steam, wishlist it. You can go check it out now. But what we're pushing here is social impact gaming. And the concept behind this game is it's around anti-poaching efforts, but 10% of all revenue will go to conservation agencies worldwide. And so we really want to start this trend of social impact gaming where games are not made just for entertainment, but are also made to do some social good in the world. Which brings us to social work, another area where AI has been applied to fantastic results. And so the question asked here is, how can we best reach the most vulnerable populations with limited resources? And so AI techniques here have presented an opportunity to leverage social networks to predict models of influence. And some domains where this is being applied are things like suicide prevention, HIV prevention, substance abuse prevention. And so Dr. Tambe, my advisor, continues to push this work. And this is a quote by him, but what Hiller recognizes is that we can't just reach the most popular youth in the community, we need to reach different social networks. Hiller is one of the systems they created. And so what they were able to show actually here in Los Angeles for HIV prevention is that they were able to increase the number of at-risk youth who came in for resources, for testing, you know, and for other needs around HIV by, I think it was 35%. So they had 35% more youth coming in to get those resources that they needed by applying the approach that Healer brought to the table, which was to reach out to very specific youth in the community, educate them, and then ask them to tell their peers and to reach out to their peers to encourage them to come in and get the education as well. And finally, radicalization prevention. The idea here is how can we confront the growing problem of online radicalization? And the solution was to identify watershed moments in a user's search journey to redirect them to alternative narratives. And a domain where this has been applied in the past is ISIS recruitment. And the redirect method was actually put together by Jigsaw, which is a child company of Google. And so this is a quote by the Director of Research and Development at Jigsaw. But what can we achieve if we aspire to something greater than computer intelligence? Because it looks like that's what the bad guys are doing, and they're really onto something. And the point they're making is that for as much as we're doing a lot of amazing work, there are definitely bad actors out there who are using these same techniques and technologies to try to achieve some negative results or some negative consequences. And so we have to work to combat that, and we have to keep up with them because they are very motivated to achieve their goals and objectives. And so I think that, the more we think about that and the more we think about how AI can fight these negative outcomes, the better it is for everyone. So my final slide, if you take nothing else away from my conversation today, these lessons learned, I think, are some of the most important that you can take away. And they're lessons learned in my life, which are find good mentors. You will find that you will get further faster by having good mentors in your life. And you'll need to keep changing those mentors as you go, because different periods of your life require different mentorship. And so a mentor can just fast track you through the problems and complications you have at the moment, because they likely have faced a lot of similar challenges and have found good solutions, or can guide you to people who have. The second one is network. I say this because the more people you expose yourself to, the more ideas you expose yourself to, the more opportunities you'll find yourself choosing between. Having that broad network of people working on broad, even if they're not related to your field at all, even if they don't seem like they might be relevant to what you're doing in your life, you never know when they'll come back around or when you'll have an idea that happens to intersect with what they're doing. And having that network just exposes you to so much more opportunity in life. And the third one really is a way to get that network and find those mentors, which is just get involved and try new things. A lot of the decisions I made in my life were because I got to experience different possibilities and got involved and tried different jobs, tried different functions, and learned a lot about what I like as a person. And finally, the theme of the talk, always be ready to abandon good plans for better ones. You may think you have your path laid out, but as new information and new opportunities present themselves, just be ready to rethink what you could be doing. Thank you.
All right, so before we go on to questions from students, I would like to start with a question first. So the SHINE students are in high school and they won't be entering the workforce for possibly 5 to 6 years unless they go to graduate school. That'll be delayed. Since artificial intelligence is changing due to innovations in technology, what do you think AI will look like in the next couple of years and beyond?
So I actually love this question because there's a lot of conversation about AI replacing the workforce or making certain jobs obsolete. And, this is something that I've given a lot of thought to, but it was someone I was having a conversation with one night who really opened my eyes to the possibility or what I actually think will come to be. And it harkens back to when computers first came out. And his point was, before computers, a lot of the things we had to do, it reminds me of this movie, Hidden Figures. A lot of the things we had to do by hand. We had to do manually, right? And so when you're calculating very complicated mathematics by hand, there were really only, a certain cohort of people in the world who could do that kind of math. But once computers came to be, it started making these things easier. And now, most people, well, I would just say the majority of people know how to use things like Excel to do a lot of, necessary like accounting or mathematics or things like this, budgeting. This has become commonplace in almost, every corporation, every workforce. There's always someone who is a master of Excel and can do a lot of very fancy calculations using Excel. And so what it did is it opened up the door to more people to do these very complicated jobs that only a select few people could do before. And I think that what we're going to see in 5 to 6 years is that AI is used much like the computer was used, which is it's going to make jobs that were really hard to access for people more accessible. And so what you're going to find is that much like we use computers to do things that we could never imagine, this Zoom call, for example, if you had asked me back in 1990 if I thought I could be in a room with dozens of people virtually having a conversation and doing something like this, people would have been like, you're crazy. It's not possible. And so I think I can't predict what it will make more accessible, but I think that we'll find AI will just allow us to do things and we'll use it to augment our own abilities in ways that we don't even understand yet.
All right. So we'll be taking questions from students. So if you could either unmute yourself or also check the chat box. And I want to share, well, you didn't say if we can call you James. Or...
Yes, please. No formalities here. Feel free to call me. I prefer Pita. It's what all my friends call me. But if you're more comfortable, you can call me James as well.
So I want to share his LinkedIn with you. So I'm going to put that in the chat box and you can request him because I know some of you are new to LinkedIn. So you can connect with him that way. And yeah, feel free to unmic yourself and ask questions, either college, he's open.
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence.
If there's anything you want me to dive deeper into, any experience I've had or anything you found fascinating, please ask away.
I just wanted to ask how you schedule and triage your time and like how you create your priorities, because as my workload piles up, that's something I have to grapple with every day. And yeah, just want to see how that works for you.
This was one of the hardest skill sets I ever had to learn because it's very easy to get overwhelmed and over-involved. And the way that I do that is everything that crosses my desk now. I think so. A couple of things. First is I think, what are my current priorities and objectives, right? So what do I really want to achieve at this moment in my life? And that moment may be a month, it may be a year. That you have to kind of gauge what your big kind of objectives are right now. And I really love this. So there's a book actually you can look up about this, but it's a simple quote. And it was an Olympic gold medalist rowing team that coined this term, but it's, will it make the boat go faster? And so what they did, they were nowhere even in the running. Nobody expected them to take the gold that year, but they asked themselves, every decision they made, their coach told them that they should ask themselves for every single decision, will this make the boat go faster? So should I eat this food that I'm about to eat? Well, will it make the boat go faster? Should I go get a drink with my friend? Well, will it make the boat go faster? So you got to figure out what your boat is. And once you know what your boat is, the easiest way to manage your time and make decisions about what you want to do with your day is to just simply ask yourself, well, will this decision make the boat go faster? And if not, then it's not something I should be getting involved with.
Thank you so much. I really love that. Yeah. Thank you.
It depends on where you are, because when you were starting your company, it was very limited. But now that, you got involved in volunteer work, which you couldn't really do before.
Yeah, that's why I said it'll change, right? Like what your boat is over time. Your boat today might be, I want to figure out what I want to do with my life. And that's a very broad topic. And you may find yourself getting involved with a lot of things to answer that question. Or it may be very narrow, right? Like I want to bring this technology to the world, and that's all I want to do, in which case almost every decision is hyper-focused on doing that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, awesome. Thanks.
I have a question.
Yes.
Have you ever dealt with imposter syndrome? And if so, like how would you handle it?
Yes and no. So I think that, so I became aware of this very early, and the easiest way to deal with it is just to understand that everyone's an imposter. You know what I mean? Like nobody has it figured out. I always love these talks. There are a lot of experts out there, and I even air quote this with people like, the late Stephen Hawking, Elon Musk, some of these people. They're very smart people. They're very smart people in the world, but nobody has all the answers, and no answer is guaranteed to be around forever. right? I'm saying that like technology keeps moving, science keeps moving. We keep learning new things every day. And so this is great advice to heed and great lessons to learn. But, you know, if you think somebody has it figured out, the reality is they don't. Nobody does. And so the best thing you can do for yourself is just, again, think about like, you know, what's the change I want to see in the world, or what's the work I want to be doing? What brings me joy? And to follow that and just be like, it doesn't matter if I'm the best or the worst or anything. What matters is that I genuinely enjoy this and I genuinely want to work on it, and it's where I want to be.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, I have a question. Like, as an entrepreneur, how did you like stay competitive in the, you know, an extremely innovative market like AI? How did your company stay competitive?
Pivot, 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 pivot. No, you know, that's one of the hardest questions for any company to ask itself. And I think that the truth of the matter is that the only way to stay competitive is to really not care about your ideas or like what you want as much as you care about what your customers need or what the industry needs. And I say that because I told you one of the reasons to become an entrepreneur is to want to see a change in the world. But in order to stay competitive, so you may create something that you want and that really makes your life better, but nobody else wants. And it's a key concern of any company. And so really the easiest way to stay competitive is just to continually touch base with the people who are using your technology, how they're using it. And, you know, no product is perfect. So what you really need to keep your eye on is, you know, I'm doing this thing, this other company is doing something very similar. Tell me what you hate about their product, right? Tell me what you wish, if you could change something, and then, you know, you focus on that, because that's the thing that it's like the biggest pain point for them. It's the thing they dislike the most. And if you can do that thing better than your competitor, then they'll always go with your product. So I think it's really just about listening to the needs and the wants of people and thinking about like how, and sometimes if they don't even, I love this, it's a Steve Jobs quote, but he says that the customer doesn't know what they need. It's when they were bringing about like, you know, iPods and iPhones and all these products, that when they were in their most innovative state, he told the world, like, you think you know what you need, but there's this thing that you've never even experienced before. So it's either bring something to the world that the world has never seen anything like before, that's just completely revolutionary, or bring something to the world that makes people's lives a little bit better.
Pita, I have a question.
Sure.
I have 2 students who work for me who are games majors. Do you have internships?
Yeah, so for games, no, because my company that I currently work for only does construction management. But I do know that Scott Brody, who is the founder of Heart Shaped Games, often works with interns. And I know that he could absolutely connect them with other people who do gaming internships. You know, the gaming world, I will say this though as a recommendation, the gaming world is changing a lot. We actually had this conversation the other day. So it used to be that it was really just the big name companies who could release games like Nintendo and, you know, Xbox, like Microsoft, you know, the EA Sports, Riot Games, you know, these big name companies. But now that they have created kind of ways to self-publish online, it's just like self-authoring a book, right? Anyone can put a book on Amazon now if they want to. You can self-publish whatever you want. And so similar in the gaming world, you don't necessarily need to work for a big name company or a big name title. If there's a game you want to create and put out into the world, you can just do it. And so, you know, if it's experience you want, definitely take the internship and learn more. I would also suggest looking at online courses. You know, Coursera is amazing. You can get a lot of free coursework there. And, you know, Unity has a lot of tutorials themselves. And so, you know, just learn. And then when you're ready, just build the game you want.
Yeah, the question came about because I asked him, as you see his TED Talk, he loves games. And I was like, why didn't you go into that space? I mean, you use game theory and a lot of kind of thought processes that go into games in your work, but like, why not? And that's kind of how that conversation came about. But he actually learned, you learned Unity this year.
Yep.
Yeah, he actually taught himself. So you're always teaching yourself.
Yeah, Unity was a new engine. I actually help Scott sometimes. I'm building in some of the like character AI for them for fun. I just wanted to learn Unity. So I said, hey, if you'll use me, I'd love to build in some of the AI for your characters in your game. And so I learned Unity, and I've been working with him on that.
Terrific. Thank you. Listen, I have a 11:30 meeting that I've got to go to. And so there might be more questions, and if you guys are willing to stay, that's great. I'm going to definitely ask everybody to help me. Thank you. That was such a fabulous presentation and really interesting perspective that we haven't had yet. And it's great to meet you, too.
Thank you.
Catalina, can you handle the wraps? Okay. All right. Excellent. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again. Any other questions?
I have a question. So you talked about how like your fourth mentor, I think, how he built a company with you, right? How did you, like, what's the story of how you guys met, and how did he like reach out to you?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a little bit about his history. His biggest success was back in the late 90s. He founded a company called Monterey Networks, which they sold to Cisco Systems for $500 million. So he was pretty set, but he loves starting companies. He just really enjoys it. And so he became an advisor for a lot of companies. He got involved with a few other startups. He had some minor successes after that, some failures. But at the time, he had moved on to be what they call an entrepreneur in residence at USC. So that's the job title. The job is to actually like scour the research labs at USC and find any research that he thinks can be like productized, essentially, right? So is there any research going on at USC that we think we can turn into a product, into a company that we could spin off? So USC was really looking to compete. Stanford is well known for this. They have an incubator at Stanford. They're creating tons of companies over there. And so USC was trying to get into that game. And so they had a team of entrepreneurs looking at research across the university that they thought they could turn into companies. And that's how he came across our work in our lab. And so he approached us based on that. And that's why he said if we wanted him to just be an advisor, he would stay as an entrepreneur in residence at USC and just advise us. But he was excited enough about our research that he said, I would be willing to walk from this current job to be the CEO of this company if you guys would want me to. And so that's how he came across us. And that's how we got involved. And if it weren't for him, I never would have considered a career in entrepreneurship. Because of him, I don't think I would consider any other kind of career now. I'm at Procore for the time being, but once we help them really get established, and I feel good about leaving them in their own hands, like, you know, I feel like we've done our job, we've got them fully set up, they've got a team, I can walk away and it'll be fine without me. I plan on starting another company.
Thank you. That was really interesting. Yeah, I didn't know they had like entrepreneurs in residence. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Anyone else?
Yeah, so I have a kind of tangential question. So what advice would you give to someone who's planning to can't decide between two fields, whether that's two majors or two directions to like go into, if that makes sense?
Absolutely. So, and I can actually speak to this directly. A little bit of history. When I was in high school, I was actually doing research in biology. So I did a program very similar to what you guys are involved in. And we were looking at creating a synthetic spider silk, which was a lot of fun, very exciting. So I actually was considering, I knew I wanted to work with computers. So I was actually considering a field in bioinformatics. And so the easiest way to answer that question is to dabble. Take courses in both, but also more importantly, really, really figure out what kind of in each of those fields, figure out what kind of jobs you might pursue. So, you know, you get the degree. I could have gotten a biology degree. I could have gotten a CS degree. I could have gotten a bioinformatics degree. Once I have the degree, what are the most likely jobs that I would end up with in that degree? And then actually find people in that job and talk to them. Like, what's your day-to-day like? What do you do? What is this job really like, right? Like, what do you find yourself working on? What other jobs do you think you could get? Like, what do people in this field typically do? Like, what's the gold standard, right? If you could reach the peak of this career, what would that look like for you? And just learn about what actually happens in that world. Because you might find that you like the idea of that world, but then when you find out the reality of what really happens in that world, you might be like, you know, maybe not.
Thank you. That answered my question.
Yeah, of course. Anyone else?
I have a question, just in case people are still thinking. We've talked about choosing undergrad versus choosing grad school. Like, how does that work related to your major? Like, when you are pretty sure you want to be like a lot of these students are STEM, engineering kind of majors, like choosing where they go.
Yeah, I love this question. So if you really do your homework and meet a lot of people who have been successful in different fields, you'll learn they come from just about every university, from undergrad wise. And so what I mean by this is that, you know, if you really are passionate about your field, for an undergrad career, I don't think it matters quite as much like that university title. You'll find a way. You'll find a way to do what you love, and you'll grow the way you should. So the advice I give to any of my family members or anyone close to me when it comes to undergrad selection is find the right community. So visit these campuses, meet the student body there, like see how they interact, see what happens on campus, see what kind of like campus life is like. Because if you really feel connected to that community, you will really succeed as an undergrad. You'll get more involved, you'll do more things. And so culture fit really matters as an undergrad. Now, for grad school, I think it's a lot less about culture fit and a lot more about mentorship. So the thing is, as a grad student, you're going to be working very closely with a single or maybe two individuals at most who are your advisors. And you're going to work with them every day. And, you know, some of them are going to be very hands-on and micromanagers and want to see you for a meeting every single day. Some of them are going to be very hands-off and be like, oh, we'll meet once a month. And you really need to figure out who you're going to work well with, what kind of work environment you want to see there, and what kind of research they're doing, because you're also going to be working on that research. So, you know, there it's all about who your mentor is, what kind of research they're doing, how they're perceived within the community. Like, they're going to ultimately be kind of your jump off point into that world. And so there you're looking at, you know, very specific people, very specific setups, very specific environments. So as you look into your undergrad career, obviously, you know, try to find schools that do well in your fields. But within that cohort of schools that are known for that field or have good educations within that field, look for the one that feels right to you, that feels like a good fit for you.
Any other questions? Any gamers want to ask questions?
And of course, Kat sent you my LinkedIn. If you guys think of anything after the fact, please feel free to reach out, add me. You know, always happy to have a conversation after the fact. I've told, and I will say this as another piece of advice, I can't tell you how many students I've told to reach out to me if they wanted, you know, to think through things or just wanted my advice on things over time. And I can tell you exactly how many students have ever taken me up on that offer, which is 0. So I say this every time, but, you know, again, mentorship I think is important. I am happy to be a mentor to students because I have had some phenomenal mentors in my life. To date, any students I've mentored or students that I have personally reached out to or taken an interest in, I have had none specifically take an interest in me. So the offer is still open. If I ever become too popular, I might stop making that offer, but as of now, it's completely open.
I will take that offer. I will send you a LinkedIn message.
Do you have any questions right now?
I don't know. I guess they're just like specific, so maybe I'll wait.
I'll leave you with one closing thought as you think about taking that offer. The other bonus or benefit of mentors is they may not be the right mentor, but if there were ever a mentor you wanted to reach or touch, depending on where that mentor is at in their career, they may be able to get you access to that person. So, you know, as I mentioned, I've had the good fortune of meeting a lot of incredible people in my life. Probably one of the most well-known people I've gotten to sit down and have a private conversation with. It was with a big group of people, so it wasn't one-on-one, but I have been in an audience with Mark Cuban, for example. And, you know, I have his personal email address and like I can reach out to him if I wanted to or needed to. That's the kind of person where you should have kind of very specific asks that he is very, you know, related to or relevant for before you reach out to, because I'm sure he gets reached out to by many, many, many people. So his time is very valuable. And those are contacts that I would only lean on in like kind of the exact right circumstances.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Again, if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out. We're always happy to, if we can't help answer something, we're always happy to point you in the right direction for any way we can help. So thank you again. Ashley, did you stop the recording already?